The purpose of the firm is to produce things. In this video, we will look at production. There are two time frames in economics: the short run, where the firm cannot change at least one of its inputs, and the long run, where the firm can change all of its inputs. The production is the amount of goods or services a firm produces for a given set of inputs or factors of production. Production is usually described by economists as a mathematical function or equation. Typically, economic textbooks keep production functions limited to two inputs: capital or labor. In addition, most introductory textbooks describe the some production, like Q, or the quantity produced, is equal to a function of K and L, or of capital and labor. In short, some of the factors of production are fixed, and some factors will be allowed to change. In a simplified textbook model, capital, or K, is assumed to be constant in the short run, because a firm can't build a new factory overnight or install new machines overnight. On the other hand, a firm can change the number of workers it has overnight, and this may be the case in construction or harvesting food, where labor is sometimes hired in the morning and fired in the evening, depending on whether they're needed for the next day. Typically, in introductory microeconomics textbooks, there is a mention of a common production function called a Cobb-Douglas production function, which was created by Charles Cobb and Paul Douglas. The Cobb-Douglas production function says that the quantity produced is a function of L to the 8th power times K to the bth power, where the sum of A plus B is equal to 0. Sometimes you might see the function written with the Greek letter alpha and the Greek letter beta, but the relationship doesn't change with the use of Greek letters. There are three measures of production. Total production is the amount of goods produced by the firm. Average production is the amount of production per unit of input, usually labor. Marginal production is the additional amount of production per additional unit of labor. Two entrepreneurs, Colleen and Boris, have decided to start a business to manufacture printers. In our example, we'll assume that Colleen and Boris have all the factors they need to produce printers except for labor, which they will need to assemble the printers. Let's make a table of the amount of labor that Colleen and Boris use and how many printers they are able to produce with the amount of labor they're using. When Colleen and Boris employ no workers, their production is 0 printers. When Colleen and Boris employ 1 worker, their production is 10 printers. When Colleen and Boris employ 2 workers, their production is 26 printers. When Colleen and Boris employ 3 workers, their production is 36 printers. When Colleen and Boris employ 4 workers, their production is 44 printers. When Colleen and Boris employ 8 workers, their production is 55 printers. When Colleen and Boris employ 9 workers, their production is 53 printers. When Colleen and Boris employ 10 workers, their production is 50 printers. When Colleen and Boris employ 11 workers, their production is 46 printers. Before getting into the details of the graph, let's take a minute to review its structure. The horizontal axis, or the x-axis, represents the amount of labor. The amount of labor increases as one moves from left to right. The vertical axis represents the amount of production. The amount of production increases as one moves from the bottom to the top. Notice the relationship between labor and production. It is labor that causes the production to happen. Notice that the amount of labor employed by Colleen and Boris increases from 0 workers to 7 workers, and the production increases. When Colleen and Boris employ exactly 7 workers, the production of printers is at its maximum. If Colleen and Boris increase the number of workers from 7 to 11 workers, the production of printers declines. The reason for the decline is that the production process used by Colleen and Boris can only accommodate a maximum of 7 workers and still have a positive impact on production. Suppose that Colleen and Boris have a single machine that they use to produce printers. The machine requires a maximum of 7 workers to operate at its maximum capacity. Now suppose they hire an extra worker who now stands around waiting to assist one of her fellow workers when they take a lunch break or coffee break. While the worker is waiting to work, she's not producing anything. Further, she's standing around and starts to chat with one of her colleagues, distracting him and reducing his ability to work. The graph illustrates the idea of diminishing returns, which means that adding more and more labor produces less and less output. Indeed, the common expression of this idea is too many cooks spoil the soup. Production is the amount of a good or service produced by a firm with a set of inputs. The average production is the amount of production per unit of input, in our case labor. The marginal production is the amount of additional production per additional unit of input. Production functions are mathematical formulas that describe the production process. Production is subject to diminishing returns, meaning that if the firm uses additional inputs, its production will eventually decrease over time.